Hello, this is Carrie Vacanti with Stampiphany, a great stampin' idea. Today's video is a little bit longer, but I have two cards that I would like to show you with a theme that kind of runs through both of them, and that is embossing with these masks. As you can see here, I have one of our sets from our holiday mini catalog. This particular one comes with 4 masks, and you can see the different patterns. I'll be using 2 of them in the video today. There's lots of different things that you can do with a mask, and I think sometimes people overlook the different things that you can do. All the supplies will be listed in the description box down below and also on my blog. So here what I'm doing is I took a piece of white cardboard stuff, I guess. It comes with our designer series paper, and I usually save those for purposes like this where I could just use a scrap. And I'm taping my masks to it to kind of give myself a folder where I can put my cardstock into, and it's not going to get the VersaMark ink, which is what I'm using all over my mat. And so this will kind of keep the mask in place. Now, as I was playing around with these, I realized that a couple things are really important. One of them is to make sure you go over your cardstock with an embossing buddy before you put it in this little handmade folder slot here. And the other thing is to take some painter's tape or some washi tape or something and tape down all 4 sides of the mask. And that's because the VersaMark is really sticky, and so it will start lifting up on you, and then what ends up happening is then your cardstock moves. So as you can see, I'm taking my VersaMark pad and I am just patting it on there. I will say this is like one of the first couple times I was using it, and you'll see it in the next one I do. It worked a lot easier to just press down and kind of wiggle it a little bit and get the VersaMark down into the holes of that mask. It seemed to work a lot better. So here I'm peeling this back, and you can kind of see how my cardstock is wet. And from here I can use pretty much, you can just use whatever color embossing powder you want to use. Today I'm just using the clear because I just wanted a nice subtle background where it would intensify the cardstock it was already on. This is Tempting Turquoise. And so I just put the clear on there and just try to get everything covered. And I think because I didn't tape the cardstock itself down, it moved a little bit, but I really didn't mind because the background didn't need to be perfect for what I was doing. So I'm taking my heat tool to it and just embossing the whole thing. Now this is one of the other masks. I'm not really sure if this is supposed to be leaves or just a little diamond pattern. It actually reminded me of the diamond pattern that you see on like the step-up rails on trucks and stuff, and so that made me think I wanted to try it on our basic gray cardstock and see if I could get it to look like a diamond pattern by using the VersaMark and clear embossing powder. And so I like the way it turned out. So I was afraid that this was going to move, and I felt because it was a vertical pattern, it would be even more noticeable. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll tape this down to keep the cardstock from moving, and that seemed to work really well. And you'll see some lines on my white cardboard there, and I drew those on with my T-ruler so I could kind of, I was trying to get it to where it would make it easier to line my cardstock up and keep it straight, but then I realized I really could just line up the cardstock with the bottom of the mask. So you could do either way, whatever, you could try both and see what works better for you. So now as you can see, I'm pressing down with a VersaMark and kind of squishing it in there, and I think that helped get a better coverage through the pattern. And it will make your mask sticky, but I just used warm soapy water and washed them all off when I was done with my stamping, and they came clean and they looked great. So I'm going to pull this out and follow the same procedure I did with the Tempting Turquoise cardstock. I'm just going to cover that with the clear embossing powder. And just make sure it has good coverage. And I always forget usually to use my embossing buddy, and this is one of those things that's really important to use your embossing buddy, which was that little sack full of powder that you saw me use on this. That helps cover it and take away the static and any oils from your fingers, so that way the powder only sticks to where you want it to. And so I'm thinking I probably should have done maybe a thicker coverage with that on this, but I still like the way it turned out, so I think it worked out fine. So once you have this all embossed and ready to go, then Now it's time to start assembling our cards. I have some basic gray and some Cajun Craze cardstock right here. And what I'm doing is taking the Archival basic black and I'm stamping the hammer on both of these pieces of cardstock. And I'm going to cut them both out and just put the Cajun Craze handle over the top of the basic gray handle and just get a multicolor hammer that way. You could, of course, watercolor this if you want to, or just do one color for the hammer. It's really all up to you what you'd like to do. But I wanted a little more dynamic to the hammer, so I decided to do it in 2 colors. You can see here I'm taking a black marker along the edge of my hammer, and this is a great way to kind of disguise if your cutting isn't absolutely perfect. Giving it that black edge will kind of hide that a little bit. So you'll see me do that around the hammer, and then I also do it around the Cajun Craze handle as well. This especially works well if you've cut something out, if you've stamped it in black and you've cut something out of white or vanilla cardstock or something really light. I believe it really does help kind of hide some inconsistencies with your cutting. So now we're ready to glue this handle onto the hammer, and I'm just going to use some of my fine tip glue pen. I really love this stuff, especially for little areas like this. The fine tip makes it easy to glue in really tiny areas, and so I really like to pull that out for purposes like this. And it dries pretty quick, so you want to make sure you keep your lid on, and that needle is really necessary to go down into the tip because it keeps the tip from getting clogged up. So when you're using it, just keep that closed so it doesn't dry up on you. So now that my hammer is all ready to go, we're going to start working on the next part of the card. And when I was thinking about this card, I was thinking about a tool belt, and some of you may be familiar with kind of the suede tool belts. And I thought, well, how do I get a suede look? And then I remembered a long time ago I learned how you break down the fibers of the cardstock. So what you see me doing here is I'm trying to break the fibers down and just crumbling it, trying to get it really, really soft and malleable. I'm taking my bone folder here and I'll run it across there, and then I turn it over, and you want to just keep working this. You don't want to do it too hard or you might rip your cardstock, especially when it really does start to get softened and weakened. You want to be a little more gentle with it. But what you're doing is you're trying to get it to the point where the paper starts to split, and you can see me checking it right here to see if the ends are starting to split. And just take out your frustrations for the day, maybe, whatever it may be. This is a good opportunity to work it out on the paper instead of someone else, I guess. But once you get to the point where it's pretty soft and it's pretty malleable, then you'll start to see those edges split, and what you can do is start gently pulling those apart, and you'll end up with 2 pieces. So really, if you wanted to, you could use one piece on one piece of card and one on another. I do think I was pulling a little bit too hard on that middle there, and so you could see it starting to weaken. So I was going to start focusing just on the edges until the paper started to pull apart. This color is Delightful Dijon. I thought this was a close match to those tool belt hides. And so I'm going to just carefully pull this apart. You want to take it slow. This isn't something you just want to rip apart quickly. You want to just gently pull it apart. And you'll see that it looks kind of fuzzy, and that's what gave me the notion that this would make a good impression of being suede, because it's nice and fuzzy. And I'm just being careful of that middle because I knew it might tear a little bit. And you just keep working it. Patience is a virtue in some cases, and this is one of them where it's just good to just gently work it until you get it to the way you want. So I had one little piece that didn't want to tear off very easily, so I'm just gently working it until I can find a spot that will tear off without making a big giant hole in my circle here. But once I found that, then I just gently pulled it apart. And keep in mind too that the hammer's going to be covering a little bit, and my greeting will be covering a little bit, so sometimes you can hide some of your mistakes behind other layers. So once I have that all ready to go, I can move on to my next step, which is my greeting. The greeting is found also in the stamp set, and I just have a piece of Crumb Cake that I'm going to stamp on it, and I used early Espresso ink to do that. I wanted kind of a brownish color to go on there. And I'm just going to stamp that in the middle and put that on my circle. Now I wanted to add some metal to this. I felt it was really necessary, kind of the rivets they put in the tool belt. So I'm going to punch some 1/16 holes in each one of the corners here. And I just have my handheld 1-inch. You could also use a paper piercer if you have one of those. Just something that would make a nice tiny hole. And I just have some brads that I had left over in my stash, and there's some antique gold brads that I thought would work really well for this purpose. So I'm going to measure where I want. I want to make sure that I don't put the greeting too far in one direction or another, so it would look kind of odd. But I do have to move it over a little bit because the plan is to have the circle going off the card. I didn't want the entire circle being on there. I wanted it to go off the card. Now because this paper has been weakened, it's really easy to poke the brads through. I don't need to poke the actual circle because it's been softened enough. So what you do is you just put all 4 brads into your little label here. And once you get that all done, it is ready to glue. Now I don't recommend using snail adhesive on this or the fast fuse because the paper has been weakened. I've tried it before, and what it ends up doing is ripping the paper up. So I would recommend a liquid glue or a type of double-sided tape that you just lay down and peel backing off of. But here I'm just using my liquid multi-purpose glue, and that works really well for this purpose. So I'm just going to put that on the front of the card over the embossing. Also, because the embossing is very textured, using the liquid glue really does help it get down into the cardstock and stick a lot better than if it was just snail. So once I have that the way I want, I'm going to turn this over and just trim off the excess of that circle that I don't want, and that will finish the greeting part of my card. I do like to use, when you have something heavier like this with the brads and some extra accents, I do like to use fast fuse on the back of that, and you'll see me use that later. Now the hammer, I didn't want that flat on the card, so I decided I was going to use some dimensionals. One great thing about the dimensionals that we sell, I guess I am going to use fast fuse now, so I guess I'll just do that. Yeah, so I'm just using the fast fuse in the back of this, and that'll help it to stick really well and not come off, because the front is going to be a little bit heavy with the embossing and all the accents in the art piece that I have on there. And this is just a piece of basic gray, just slapped on a basic gray base that's 5.5 by 4 1/4 folded. So now I use my dimensionals, and I like to use, since this hammer handle is a little skinny, I like to use just the edge of dimensionals. One great thing about the dimensionals is that you can use every last bit off the sheet. And this little skinny part right here is perfect. So you saw me measure a little bit there to make sure I was cutting the right length. And now I'm going to do the hammer head right here, and I'll just cut off 2 little things right there. And they do tear fairly easy as well. As you can see me tear that apart to make it easier to adjust it so it doesn't show through on the other side. Now once that's done, I can take the backing off of that and attach that to the greeting on the front of my card. I was one of the habits that I have with my family is I like to kind of take my creation over to them and kind of get like a survey, consensus of what they think, and they're all pretty good about giving me some great feedback. So at this point I took it to my family and it's like, hey, what do you think? And a couple of them said they didn't think it was grungy enough. So I went and masked off some of the card and took the sponge dauber with some early espresso and just grunged it up a little bit, and then took my Crumb Cake fine tip of my marker and just did some subtle stitching around the edge of that greeting. I felt that that really did add some details to it that helped. On the next card, this is the one that looks kind of like the paisleys or water drops on the card. We're going to do this one in kind of a fish theme and in kind of some bright colors. I love tempting turquoise with red and with orange. I just think it looks so bright and happy. I think it's perfect to brighten somebody's day. The fishy I'm using is from the set, I believe, Jar of Love or Jar Full of Love. I'll have the description down below. Now when you're stamping your little fish, you could go straight with just the color. Here's what Tempting Turquoise looks like, and it's a bright and happy color. And I love the colors together, but sometimes when you're stamping, it's nice to take the image and help it not look so flat. Sometimes you need something that's going to be a little more dynamic. So I wanted to show you the three colors, the turquoise, Tempting Turquoise, Real Red, and the pumpkin pie. And now I inked it back up again in the pumpkin pie, and I'm taking a sponge dauber, and I'm daubing around the stamp. And that is to kind of add a little bit of color. And you can see it's got a nice little subtle red around the edges, but I thought, no, I want that a little bit more, so I'm going to do it again, but this time I'm going to get a little more aggressive in putting that red color on there. And when you see that stamped, you can see how it really does add a nice dynamic to the fish, so he doesn't look quite so flat. So then I decided I really liked that, so I've got Soft Sky, which works really well with the Tempting Turquoise, and I'm going to do the same technique. Now, if you want, you can use just a regular sponge to do that. I like the sponge daubers because they're small, and I think it's a lot easier to use it on the smaller stamps. It works well for getting around the edges of those little areas. So then I'm going to do that again because I think I wanted some more blue with that. I really do like the Soft Sky and the Tempting Turquoise together. I think they look really, really pretty. So, of course, in between each stamping, I am washing it and drying it, scrubbing it on my Stamp and Scrub along the side there. And now I'm going to do my last fish with Daffodil Delight and the pumpkin pie with a dauber. If you're going to do it on one, you might as well do it on all three, right? So I just love the little rainbow effect of all these little fishes together on this card. I just think this fish is adorable. So I'm just going to finish up with him. And this set, this particular stamp set does come, or doesn't come with, but does have a die set available to purchase with it. And you don't have to hand cut out or fussy cut out the little fish. So I took those over to my Big Shot and I die cut all those little fish out. And so I'm going to finish assembling my card. This one also, the circle will go off to the side and I'll trim that off later. But I felt that the circle was a little bit too plain with just the fish, and I felt it needed just a little bit more motion with it. So I got out my Swirly Bird bundle set. It's one that I just think is a great set, and it has some swirls with it. Here I am just trying to work it, like where do I want these fish to go? And I just thought there was too much white space in there. So this is where I pulled out the waves, I guess, from that die set. And I decided that I didn't really want those waves to go clear across the entire thing. I thought, wouldn't it be fun if it was more like a fishbowl? So what I did was I took those and I die cut them with the same circle I used to die cut the white circle. And I'm just going to glue those on the front. You can see those match. But I need to trim off my circle here before I do that. But here I am just arranging the fish. Do I want them above? Do I want them below? Where do I want my greeting to go? And I decided that I wanted my greeting to go in that white space above, and it would be fun to have the fishies kind of swimming in the waves right there. So I decided this set right here, the Celebrate Today, would be perfect because the Celebrate kind of has a wavy look to it, and I felt that that matched really well with our Soft Sky waves that we have going on. So now I'm going to glue those waves that I die cut onto my Celebrate piece, and I'm just going to use my fine tip glue pen, which again works great for these type of things, little fine or small areas. I've got some tweezers here to hold those so I don't get my fingers all gooey or icky from the glue. And it's always good to have a pair of tweezers hanging around somewhere for things like this. It makes it a lot easier not only to get the glue on there without getting your hands all nasty, but excuse me, but also to place it where you need it to go. So I've got both pieces on there. I'm going to trim off the excess that I don't need with my handy snips there. And once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and take the Celebrate piece and go ahead and put that on my card. Now I am going to use some Fast Fuse because it's really strong. And with that embossing on there, I need something that's going to stick to it really well. And I felt that the Fast Fuse would do a good job that way. So once that's in the corner like I want it to be, it will be time to put the fish on. Now this layout is just like the other layout, and the reason I wanted to show both these cards was so you could see how you could change up colors and stamp sets but use the same layout and give a card a completely different feel and a completely different look. Now I'm just going to put some dimensionals on my fish here, and I'm just cutting along the edge because I want the dimensionals to be a little bit smaller because I didn't feel that the regular size dimensionals in the middle, I felt they'd be too big. Excuse me. I'm trying to get over a cold here, so I apologize. So once I have my fish there, I'm just putting them on the front. Once I have them all placed where I want them to go, I felt they needed just a little bit more to them. So I decided I was going to go ahead and get out my Wink of Stella, and this is the clear Wink of Stella, and I'm going to just color right over the top of each fish. And this kind of reminded me of rainbow fish. I used to read those books to my kids when they were little, and I loved reading those books, and I just thought rainbow fish was just so pretty. And so adding the Wink of Stella just seemed to be something natural, I guess. Maybe it's in my psyche somewhere deep. But I just thought it also added a nice little shimmer and shine to the fish and a little more dynamic to them, and it's really not hard to do. Now, Wink of Stella is a great product to just kind of have hanging around because it's a great way to add just a little bit of a wow to your art piece without a lot of effort. And we sell the clear and the gold, and I think both are just great to have around whenever you want to add that little shine to it. Now that I had that done, I did take it to the family and once again asked them, hey, what do you think? And we all agreed it needed something. And so in lieu of doing a mat, because it was already glued down, I decided to die cut a circle. So I used the same size circle I used for the white and one circle larger and made this little ring here. And I've used my ruler to trace where I need to trim it down so it matches the white where it ends there on the side of the cardstock. And so you can see I've made the line and I'm just cutting it exactly how the line was made to make sure that the angles of that circle follow along with the angles of the cardstock. And so this is kind of an alternative. I guess this is kind of a, oops, I wanted a mat. This is a great way to get kind of the matte look, like you've mounted it on a matte piece of cardstock and you really didn't. Plus I guess it saves a lot of paper because the circle, you're not using quite as much paper. Now I was looking at, do I really want the soft sky? And I did try the pumpkin pie ring, but I felt it was too much. I felt it detracted too much. So I went ahead and went back to the soft sky and decided that I was going to go ahead and just use that. Now I've just got this little corner that I need to trim off, and I followed the same procedure I did with the last one, used my ruler, made sure it was a straight line. And now I'm just taking a little bit of my fine tip glue pen and just gluing that on the front there. So that is my second card. Same layout, different colors, different stamp set, but really a great way to use your mask. There's lots of different ways to use your mask. I just thought it would be fun to emboss, and I really like how both these cards turned out. I think they both would be great for masking the cards or a youth card, whatever. I hope you enjoyed both cards today. Both of the cards will be on my blog with a list of supplies if you'd like to make these cards, and feel free, if you don't have a demonstrator, to visit my online shop and you can order the supplies that you need to make these cards. Thank you so much for stopping by today and sharing these ideas with me, and I hope you have a great day.